Hello and welcome to Cargill People and Science Live, where we bring science out of the lab and explore the people, experiences, and stories behind it. I'm Francesca Brazzarotto, your host, and it's a great honor to introduce you to today's guest, Dr. Liz O'Riordan. Welcome, Dr. O'Riordan.
Thank you.
As a former breast surgeon, breast cancer fighter, and leading patient advocate, Dr. O'Riordan has become a prominent voice in healthcare. Through her award-winning blog, Breast Surgeon with Breast Cancer, her podcasts, and her multi-channel program, So Now I've Got Breast Cancer, she has used and still uses her personal journey and other timely, very frank, clear information and examples to educate and inspire others. She's also the author of 3 books, The Complete Guide to Breast Cancer, which she co-authored with Professor Tricia Greenhalgh, Under the Knife, which I got here, and is sort of a memoir describing her life and her journey through med school, on the wards, and then after with a battle with cancer. And I must say, this is a great book. It's really well written, very in a witty way, and I read this during a like 2-day romantic weekend. But spoiler alert, there are some parts in there that are definitely not romantic material, like the colorectal surgery unit adventures, let's say. And then her third and latest book, The Cancer Roadmap, will be also out and available at the end of January, I believe,
Yeah.
next year. So
Yeah.
congrats.
Thank you.
And she was recently recognized with the humanitarian award from Future Dreams Breast Cancer Charity, which is amazing, for her work in patient advocacy. So a very, very busy gal, and that's why we are so grateful and honored to have her here today to dedicate us a little bit of her time. So welcome again, and let's get started, shall we?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So, Dr. Liz, I have only mentioned some highlights of your life and career, but your journey from breast surgeon to patient advocate is quite unique and truly and deeply personal, of course. Could you please tell us a little bit more about your journey, especially for those people that haven't been following you on social media or have read the book?
Of course. Thank you, Francesca. So I was a consultant breast surgeon in England and I never checked my breasts. I thought I was invincible. I'd had a couple of breast cysts in the past and I was 40 and I looked in the mirror after having a shower and I saw a lump in my cleavage. And I just thought it was another cyst. And it was only my mum who said, go and get it checked out. And that cyst ended up being a stage 3 breast cancer. And within 2 weeks, I found myself in the chemo chair, having every treatment that I gave my patients. And I realized how hard it is to go through chemo, how hard it is to make a decision about whether to have your breast reconstructed after a mastectomy, how awful the instant menopause is that you get with chemotherapy and hormone blockers. And I had a year of treatment. And it took me another 6 months to be mentally and physically ready to go back to work, which I did. Sadly, a year later, I had a local recurrence on my chest wall, and that meant more surgery, more radiotherapy, having my ovaries out, switching my tablets. And then last year, actually, the day before my memoir came out, I saw a little ulcer on my mastectomy scar, and that was my second local recurrence. So I'm now on treatment for life to stop it becoming incurable.
That is
It's quite a
a
lot.
lot. It is a lot for anybody, and I bet it's a lot, especially if you know what you are
Yeah.
going to go through. You know that in theory because you are, an expert in the field.
Yeah.
How does it feel to, having to kind of live that, on your own skin and just say, okay,
Yeah.
to live this as a person, not just as a surgeon. You know what I mean?
I think my problem, so I knew it was cancer when I saw my ultrasound. I didn't need to wait for the biopsy. I knew. And I've looked after women younger than me who have died of metastatic disease. I
Mm.
can't unsee that knowledge in my head. And it was hard working out how much to share with my husband and my parents because they don't need to know all of that yet. But I still have this real fear. And it was hard as a surgeon to give up control and to accept that I've not been a patient before and I have
Mm.
to go through this and I have to learn how to ask for help and learn to cope with the collateral damage of treatment. And I think part of me is still in denial because I can't believe it's actually happened. And I think that's why I keep myself so busy. So you do keep those really dark days to a minimum, but it is really, really hard. And it gives you a whole new appreciation of what your patients go through when you've been in their shoes.
Yeah, I bet. And I think I remember a part in the book where you were saying, now I understand some prescription or some things that I
Yeah.
told patients to be quite cold at the time. And now that I'm on the other side, I can understand how they might have felt at the time. So your perspective on patients' care has kind of evolved now, right? And it must have influenced the way that you are speaking and writing about cancer. So do you think other specialists, other surgeons, other practitioners, how can they become more empathic or empathetic towards their patients without having to go through the whole thing themselves? Is there a way,
Yeah.
you think?
Great questions. I'll be honest here. As a breast surgeon, I would go to conferences, and the patients who spoke were generally put in the nursing streams, not the doctor streams. And if there was a patient speaking, I think, well, I don't need to hear a patient speak because I hear patients talk to me all day in, day out. I don't need to know what they're saying. I'm only here to network and to learn what the latest science is. And it was only when I went to a metastatic conference in Portugal and they put women between the major keynotes. So you couldn't leave the room. You'd be embarrassed. And I learned so much because patients don't tell us what it's like when they come to see us. They're terrified. They have a list of questions. They want to get in and out. We don't know what it's like to live with a cancer diagnosis. And it was only when I saw those women speak and I thought, oh, wow, there is so much I have to learn, but I don't have the time to do it. And even though there's so much I would change, like communication, the words we use to describe breast cancer, I only have 10 minutes. I can't talk to them about sex and death and diet and exercise and what to do. But can I educate my breast care nurses to do that? And I'm embarrassed to say I had never been on a breast cancer patient forum or looked at a website or an app to see what patients needed because I'm too busy learning how to treat them. But I think taking a couple of hours just to explore books written by patients, what they're posting on Instagram, what they're putting in forums, the questions they're asking each other that they're too scared to ask you. And often it is really, really little things. And you may not be the person to answer that question. But, well, okay, but my breast care nurse could do this, or my oncology nurse could do that. And just explore what patients are asking and looking for online. And that will help you get an idea of other things you can do to help them when the doctor says goodbye.
Yes, that's absolutely makes absolute sense, and I think there's a big gap between the practitioner sometimes and the patient in terms of communication and language, right?
Yeah.
As you were kind of saying. So we
And I
need
guess
ways. Yeah, sorry.
it's where I see myself trying to fill that gap.
Yeah.
I know what patients want and I can explain it to them in really simple terms, and I have the time to do that. So I'm trying to fill the gap between the things your doctor doesn't have the time to say and to stop you looking for false information online.
Yes, and that's what communities online are usually for, right? Is to give that
Yeah.
kind of information in a way that is accessible to anybody and not just people with experience in the
Yeah.
field, particularly. Just to take a step back for a second and just talk about breast cancer, which is the
Yeah.
main topic of this event, and also October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so there's a lot of activities out there. I'm sure you've been, well, I'm sure I know you've been very, very busy. Could we just talk a little bit about breast cancer and a bit about what we're talking about, and involves men, women, any ages, just older women? So can we elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So breast cancer is predominantly a disease that affects older women. Those are the two biggest risk factors for having it, being a woman because you have more breast tissue and getting older. The lifetime statistics vary by country to country, but basically you have a 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 chance of getting breast cancer if you live until you're 80. But when you're 30, your risk is 1 in 200 women. When you are 60, it's 1 in 40 women. When you're 90, it's 1 in 4 women. So your risk is low in your 30s, but as you get older, it increases.
Right.
Men, about 1% of breast cancers happen in men because they do have a little bit of breast tissue. And again, it is more common in older women, but young women in their 20s and 30s are getting it. And we know that the numbers are increasing in women under the age of 50. And we're not 100% sure why, but we think some of it has to do with how our lifestyle behaviors have changed. Because
Right.
it's the boring things that can further reduce your risk of getting it. It's exercising 5 times a week. It's drinking less than 14 units of alcohol a week. It's trying to make sure you are not obese or overweight, which is really, really hard. And the impact of those behaviors on your personal risk is small. But if we get 1 million women all doing that, you can prevent 4 in 10 cancers, not just breast cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say those are the tips that usually you hear connected to many others kind of pathologies and diseases, right?
Exactly. It's not just breast cancer, it's heart disease, because that kills more women than breast cancer. The family history is only a very small part. Only 5 or 10% of breast cancers come from mutations that you have inherited from your parents that we know about. So that's only a very small part. And for most of us, it's just bad luck.
All right. I mean, talking about bad luck.
But it is.
Yes, it is. Sorry.
So I drank like a fish in medical school. I was a junior doctor. That's what we did. And that may have caused 2 or 3 changes in my cell, but the rest of them are just bad luck, things that happen. I was fit. I was healthy. I was a triathlete. I had no family history. And I got breast cancer when I was 40.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You are really, really athletic. You've done a lot of
Yeah.
sports, which I envy. But yeah, it's hit or miss, right? But
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the fact that men can get it. So it is something
Yes.
that should not be, ignored by men. And also younger women. And as I was just mentioning before the event started, I had a doctor appointment yesterday. I'm 39. I have people in my family that have had breast cancer and multiple times. And the doctor told me, well, you need to go and get checked now. Just go and get checked, do a mammography and also an echo, just to make sure you're safe. Just because, it's not just between 50 and 64 years old in Italy when it's the main time to go and get checked. If you know that there might be a chance, just go and get screened. And I don't think it's a big undertaking, actually. I'd rather be safe than sorry, to be honest.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of resources online, and that's where we can move to social media.
I can talk a bit about family history and whether you need extra screening. So in the States, it's different. They start mammograms from the age of 40. In the UK and Europe, it's 50. And the reason is mammograms work by picking up a white cancer on a black breast background. Right. And when you hit the menopause, your breast tissue turns from breast tissue into fat, and fat looks black on a mammogram. And breast cancers are white because of tiny calcium deposits in the cells in the cancer. But when you're 20 and 30, your breasts are full of breast tissue, they're dense, and they look white on a mammogram. So you can't see a tiny white cancer in a white breast. If you only have one relative affected with breast cancer and they are older than the age of 40, I think maybe 45, you are not at any increased risk.
Okay.
If you have 2 or 3 relatives, so a mum or a sister or an aunt diagnosed in their 40s, 50s or 60s, it's worth going to your doctor to find out, and they can refer you to a breast clinic to see if you are at an increased risk. And they can then say, right, you are medium risk, we should mammogram you from the age of 40, or you're very high risk, we should do MRIs from the age of 30. So if you do a family history, ask your doctor to refer you to a breast clinic, and they can say, right, this is your increase in risk. This is when we should start scanning you.
Perfect. So at the end of the day, just be proactive about it. Just don't let it happen and keep it under control.
The earlier we can pick up breast cancer, the less treatment you are likely to need, the less likely you are to need a mastectomy, the less likely you are to need chemotherapy. When you're young, self-examination is all you have to try and pick up something early. And that's why we say do it every month. Most women don't. I'll be honest, life is too short. Like most men don't check their testicles every month. But it's the only thing you have to try and find something at a really early stage. So you need as little treatment as possible.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, I always think about is just if you are not directly affected by something or by somebody that is close to you that is going through it, it's unlikely that you're going to be proactive about it. But this is such an important topic for women, and this is how it is. So if anybody's listening out there, just please make sure you take the proper, actions towards, getting checked, or at least making sure you know how to check yourself. And social media is a great place to find information about this if you're uncertain about things. However, there's good sides and negative and positive sides to social media, as we'll discover. So you've been quite active. You're on every platform. I've been following you, and that really helps you connect with others, with patients. do you have any platform that you prefer, or any format that you prefer, like between podcast, videos, or blog?
Ooh, it's changed a lot. So I started on Twitter back when it was called in 2015 with a blog, and I started writing really to make my cancer seem real, because I was in denial. And my mum and my brother lived in Switzerland and Scotland. They were far away. And by writing, I can explain what's happening. But doctors and nurses and medical students and patients started reading it. And I was trying to explain it in non-scary terms. This is what actually happens and why. And that led to me being asked to do a TEDx talk in Stuttgart, which led to me being asked to do more talks. And I suddenly found this platform on Twitter where I could meet other breast cancer patients who told me how to cope and what to do, because I bought 20 books. I didn't know what it was like to have chemotherapy. I was trying to find patients to give me the truth, but the sensible truth. And then I dabbled on Instagram, but that was mainly about sewing and rescuing hedgehogs. I didn't have any cancer content on there. But when I wanted to write my memoir, they said, we can't promote you because you don't talk about cancer on Instagram and you don't have enough followers. So I started putting videos out during the pandemic to grow my Instagram page, to get videos out there. And eventually I had to crowdfund my memoir, but that took off as a platform. And I discovered video is a great way to explain concepts, and having fun using props and just little bite-sized pieces.
Yes.
And then I thought, well, everyone has a podcast, so I should do a podcast. And I answer listeners' questions with experts. So I love having those conversations to really get into the nitty-gritty. And it's just, when I had to resign as a doctor in 2019 because I couldn't operate, my arm didn't work, I had to find other ways to help people. And I just love all of it. The writing, the videos, the blogging, the podcasting. It's just, some people like to listen to their content, some like others. I think Instagram is my main one, but YouTube is a great library of content, because if I put a video out 2 years ago on Instagram, no one's going to scroll back through the feed. But my YouTube channel is a library where everything is. And it's evergreen. People can always come back and find it. And that's what I love. You get a message from one person saying, thank you, I found your channel. I now understand. I know what to ask my doctor. And that's why I do it.
No, that's great. And some of the videos are really, not some, they're all very informative, but some of the videos are also very funny because, as you say, you use some props. And I think it really helps get the idea of what you're talking about, because for some of us, these medical concepts are just, too, unknown.
Too much. And also, there's a whole science to making videos that people will watch. The catchy line and the props to get people to stay and watch, because you're driving the algorithm. So me just talking is boring, but I bring in a phone and an Apple. So I'm having a lot of fun learning how to keep people watching.
Yeah, no, and it works. It definitely works. And speaking of algorithms, so just to frame this question a bit better, we all know that social media is a place that helps create communities. At the same time, it also polarizes people. So you have a lot of factions, and they're all very vocal about things. If they don't like it, they will let you know. At the same time, social media is really very much a sort of an echo chamber, and kind of gets into a bubble. So the algorithms tend to show you what they think you're more likely to like and follow, and and kind of agree with. So you sometimes find yourself that you're just seeing the content that kind of is on, echoes what you think already. And there's not much diversity. So that could be a problem when it comes to sharing information of any kind, not just medical, but also political and stuff. And you might think, oh, well, look, everybody knows already about breast cancer. Everybody's talking about it, right? But then the reality is that only the people in your little bubble talks about it. Have you encountered that? Have you seen this when sharing?
On X and an Instagram, you see the content you create. I generally don't see the bad stuff because I don't go looking for it. It's like during COVID, I wasn't seeing any of the anti-vax. It's all made up by the government because I knew that was wrong. But what I now get is I get breast cancer patients sending me videos about this causes breast cancer and this doesn't. Is this true? So I can now see what is going on to try and combat it. But I'm also and debunk it, which is hard work because if something that's topical, people will send it to me now, which is great, but it takes a lot of time to do that. I am very aware that most of my followers are like me. They are probably Caucasian and middle class and educated. And it is
Mm.
very hard to reach those ethnic minorities, actually global majorities, people who don't look like me, who don't speak my language.
Mm.
How do you make sure they can get all that information?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I find the same, and not just for medical information, but for everything. And I'm really curious. So what I started doing now is going to a post that will say, cancer cure found, right? And go through the comments and see what people are
Yes.
saying, because that's also the place where you can actually get an idea of,
Oh,
okay, there's the
it's
majority of
amazing.
people. Yeah, they are agreeing
I
about this. And it's
Yeah.
shocking. It's
So I have
shocking.
one of my most popular videos on YouTube is when I debunk a myth saying sugar doesn't cause cancer.
Mhm.
And you don't need to starve your body with sugar to cure cancer. It's nonsense. And half the comments are, thank you for saying this. And half the comments are, this doctor is terrible. She should be struck off. She should be killed. How dare you say this? There's just this completely polarizing views.
Mm.
And it is fascinating reading the comments of people to see how polarized their opinions are, and learning I cannot change how they think. All I can do is put the information out there. And also, you get what you're looking for. If I put into Google, say, do deodorants cause breast cancer, I'll get loads of videos telling me they do. But if you say, is it a myth that deodorants cure breast cancer, you'll see the
Yeah.
other side.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and do, is search both sides of the coin so I can see why do you think this, and how can I maybe persuade you that it's wrong.
Yeah, it's really crazy how these things work, and how easy it is to find people that totally agree with you. But then when you go and dig a little bit further, then you can find that actually maybe
Yeah.
the majority, they don't. And it's like, how's that possible? I thought everybody was just, that's
No.
obvious,
So as an example, I've had women come to me saying, my oncologist and my breast surgeon said it's safe to take this, but I saw a video on TikTok that said it's not, so I'm asking you. And a testimonial from a stranger has far more weight than your medical team. And if a doctor has 2 followers on Instagram, but an alternative medical practitioner is 3 million, you're going to believe them because they have far more followers. So it must be true. And I think podcasts are becoming really dangerous, because people assume their guests are telling the truth. No, I know mine are, because I double check and I'm an expert in that field. But if you're a chemist interviewing a lawyer, you assume the lawyer is telling you what's true in law, but you don't double check them. And then a conversation gets broken down to a little soundbite, and then suddenly people are acting on that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's very complicated. I also saw that under a few, medical. Well, there was one about cancer actually that I saw yesterday on TikTok. And TikTok, I think, is one of the, I would like to say, worst one when it comes to
It is.
information of this kind. And there's a lot of them about sunscreen being, dangerous for you, as you said, also anti-deodorant and all those sort of products. But then in the comments, you can see just a lot of bots and spammers just writing things such as, oh, Dr. X just cured me of all my diseases with their medical herbs. And then they put the tag. Yeah. And I'm just afraid a lot of people might go and click there and just look at these alternative
they do.
cures, and that could be also very much related to their cultural background, or where they come from, actually.
Yeah.
So
a lot of the comments are bot driven to drive the comments, to drive the views, to get it up, and people are desperate. I think when you have cancer, you want certainty and hope. Yeah. Why did it happen? Can you promise me it won't come back? No one in mainstream medicine can do that. We cannot tell you why you got breast cancer. We cannot say we can definitely cure you. But there are alternative, functional, naturopathic, integrative practitioners who will say, I can cure you. Give me all your money and I will give you these treatments. Yeah. But it's based on animal studies in mice from 20 years ago. It's not true. They can cherry pick the data. And when you're vulnerable, you think, I want to be cured. I'm going to find £60,000 to go to this clinic in Mexico for 3 weeks because this man said he can cure me. And you want that hope and certainty. And doctors have to spend a lot of time telling you all the side effects. We don't go, chemo is a brilliant drug and it's saving millions of lives. We say, chemo will make you lose your hair and have this and this and this and this and this. But the alternative practitioners and social media, when they are selling these, they don't give you the list of side effects. They just have possibly made up testimonials from AI chatbots and stock photos. And you think, wow, 3 people
Yeah.
said it cured them. It must be true. It's like a deodorant study. 9 out of 10 people love this face cream. But did you only ask 10 women? And were they being paid to take part in the survey? And did you give them the product for free? Of course they're going to say they loved it. I
Yeah.
think we don't know how to analyze data, how to think for ourselves, how to question what we're being told. We just take it at face value.
Yeah, that's it. And they are marketers and salespeople, and they play on hope.
Exactly.
You know,
They are
sell you.
making money. They are making millions. And so the wellness industry is worth 4 times what the big pharma industry is.
Yes, that's not a well-known number known out
But
there.
it's true.
That's for sure.
The health wellness supplement industry is worth 4 times what the pharmaceutical industry is.
Take notes out there, our viewers. No, that's really interesting and important to know. And I think critical thinking is necessary and needs to be taught at every level, not just a university. And we've been talking about this for so long now in the published environment and the research environment, due to the broader use of AIs, right? And how simple it is just to type in ChatGPT or any other AI tool, what is the best cure for cancer, or this and that, and they will give you just a few answers, and they just say, okay, it must be true. So
and I've tried that. So I tried using ChatGPT or Claude just to come up with a script. What 5 things that don't cause breast cancer. And 3 of them were wrong. But because Google has so many sites, they're saying this is wrong, it thinks it's right. So you have to know that what you're being told is false. But just can we talk about risk at some point?
Of course, yes.
So I think most people are very bad at understanding numbers and risk. So let's say there's a headline in a newspaper or a podcast that says eating bacon doubles your risk of breast cancer. Most people think that means you have a 1 in 2 chance of getting breast cancer if you eat bacon.
Okay.
But it doesn't. So you have to drill down to say, well, what is your own actual risk? Because that's a relative risk, which sells headlines. If you're 30, your risk is 1 in 200. So eating bacon will double it to 1 in 100. That's still really, 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 really small. But then you have to think, how much bacon did you have to eat to double your risk? And the study, it turns out you had to eat bacon 3 times a day for 5 years to see that increase in your risk.
Yeah.
But you've now got women terrified to not have a bacon sandwich at a weekend because they're scared they're going to get breast cancer. And I try and break that down. So you see a scary headline. What does it actually mean to you? How many extra women will get breast cancer if they all eat bacon? So you can think, okay, I don't need to panic.
Yeah. It's all a matter of knowing how to interpret the numbers, but also the numbers to be clear and not just the headline.
And how numbers in a study. So there's a study I'm looking at now that's saying if you eat mushrooms and green tea together, you can reduce your risk of breast cancer by 97%.
Okay.
But that was a snapshot figure and it's relative risk. And how do you put that into what people can understand? But we don't. We just take the figure from the abstract because that's the headline. And I think we have a responsibility to think what people are going to see. It's that ripple down effect. From a scary headline that means women are going to stop doing something, like Elvia Macpherson's story. I'm not going to have chemo because I saw this one woman did this. And then people die. Yeah.
So there's so much to unpack just in this answer. Let's see if we can. No. It's amazing. It's like, it's really interesting. And I think, that's what we all do. If you're not part of the scientific community that looks at those numbers, or you come from a different, background, it's not stuff that is necessarily clear to you. So, and I've seen this also with, sunscreen and, by digging into it and trying to understand, okay, but who's right? The one pro, the one against, and then, what kind of studies they did and how much sunscreen you had to put on you in order to get, some kind of, response to ingredients. Jeez, it took me like hours. And I was like, nobody has the time to do that for every single piece of information that they get online or on a, a newspaper or whatever. So it's tiring. It's exhausting.
So that's why I generally send people to recognized websites. Like in the UK, we have CR UK, who pay people to go through the latest research to say that. You've got the American Society of Cancer in the States, proper government run, big charities. If you can find it on 3 different sources who say, yes, sunscreen is safe, sunscreen is safe, sunscreen is safe, then you know. But if it's just 2 or 3 people who aren't from a big organization. So I think that can be a really simple way.
Yeah.
Go to your country's cancer government website and just see what are they saying. They will tell you the truth.
Absolutely, I agree, and great tip. And so going back to responsible information. So there are 2 things that I like to look at. The first one has to do with publishing. So we are a publishing house, Karger, and we're really dealing a lot in lately with open access, open science, open data, and how important they are becoming. It's a movement that started already like 20 years ago, but it's really now at its peak. There are dangers with open access. We know it's great because you get to share your research with the whole world, and usually it's peer-reviewed research. So you would like to know, like to think there is like a nice level of filtering the bad stuff out and have the nice stuff and sound science going out into the world. However, there's also a danger that kind of fake, not really sound science written by AI or not really peer-reviewed could get out there in the world. And it's available for LLMs to pick up, or for the news even to quote, if we're talking about some preprint version of articles that haven't not really been checked, and then they're not the final articles being published. What is your experience with that? Do you think about this as well when you
So I have a PhD in molecular oncology, and I remember having to spend thousands of pounds getting access to journals that my university didn't subscribe to. So I get there. Scientists understand what a peer-reviewed journal is. We know that the Lancet carries far more weight than an Indonesian journal of psychoneurology. We know that. And we know that this is done by proper people. It's properly peer-reviewed. It's right. But a lot of people don't. And they think just because something is published in a journal, it must be true. It must be good medicine. And I will often go and look at a lot of the studies quoted when they say, so turmeric cures cancer. And I'll go back and say, well, this is from 20 years ago. And it's a study in cells in a tiny journal in Korea. There's nothing wrong with Korea, but it's a tiny, tiny little journal that only looked at 3 people. I know this is nonsense, but that you can put anything as a reference and impress the general public. And I think with that AI, you do not know whether someone has written it. You could put your data into ChatGPT and say, write a paper. And a lot of people are using this to save time, but actually, is it true? Is it accurate? And I really, really worry. And I was talking to someone the other day who said, well, you've written your book and it's all about debunking cancer myths. Who checks it? I said, well, no one checks it. My editor assumes that everything I have written is true. She doesn't fact check it. She doesn't have time. I could put a book on Amazon tomorrow, self-published, saying bananas cure cancer. And that could go global. Oh my goodness, making up the papers. No one checks it. They assume that what is printed is the truth. And this is my worry. It's educating people to say, these are the big journals. If it's not in this journal, or it was only done 20 years ago, and there's not been a fleet of research after, then it wasn't accurate. But we don't have the time to tell people. And there has to be that level of trust. And I think it's really, really hard to know who can you trust, who can't you?
Yeah, and a lot of people have been using these sort of articles that have been retracted afterwards.
Yes,
to base their own, assumption and make
and again, if you can't get the full article, all you have is the abstract, and you can't see, well, they didn't do this, this was wrong, and here's on their conclusion, all the things that were wrong with the paper, that doesn't come in the abstract. It's all they see. It's like a 60-second clip from a podcast. And people are using that to base their alternative claims on. And there aren't enough people like me to go around to say, actually, hang on, I've spent 20 quid to get the paper and I've looked at it and it's nonsense. It's not proof. It is so hard.
It is hard. It's terrifying. You get a lot of love, but you get also a lot of hate, depending who's or listening to your videos, or
but you do in divisive subjects. A lot of people disagree with what I say, and I've learned just to switch off the trolls and not interact because it can get really unpleasant at times. There are cults of belief. And you're in a different church and they are never going to agree with you. And I've learned not to argue with them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they've always existed, but maybe they were by themselves, and then they found a community online that is much easier than being someplace in real life, and they have more power because they're all.
It's easier to be unpleasant online because it's all anonymous.
Yeah.
You can quickly go and write a really nasty comment that you would never say to someone in person because it's online. They think it doesn't matter. And that's really hard when you're trying to do good and suddenly you are being attacked.
Yeah.
For just explaining something really simple.
Yeah, and that really leads well to my next question, which is it sounds very hard and very difficult. So, what advice would you give to other healthcare professionals or researchers in medicine that are hesitant, might be even more hesitant after this conversation about using social media to engage with patients or to share their expertise?
I was really hesitant. Sorry, just get a drink of water.
Oh, don't worry.
I was on Twitter using my married name, but I worked under my maiden name because I didn't want patients to find me and come and ask me a load of questions. It never happened. YouTube is the new Google. Patients are desperate for information to fill in the gaps of what we don't have time to tell them. And there are some incredible healthcare content creators doing amazing work, just basically explaining things. We can't remember what you tell us. And actually, if you think of all the questions you get asked routinely in a clinic, that is content for you. You could just film yourself, put it up out there, and you can reach hundreds and thousands of people all over the world. YouTube now is a health shelf where it will promote content from doctors because they assume it's going to be more accurate than other people. I think you don't know what your patients are looking for. So you don't know how desperately they need the information you can give them. Most people don't attack you because you're not giving controversial advice. You're just explaining a hip operation or what an endoscopy is like. They just want all these little bits and tricks. And it's an incredible place to interact with people to find out what they need. It might change your practice. It can lead to so many other opportunities. And I would encourage everybody just to start it. Your first video will be terrible. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's just getting your face on the camera and just chatting as if you're talking to someone in clinic. And then you've got this content that you could put on your own website to explain. And you tell patients, you won't remember anything I've told you, but here's a list of videos I've done that you can go and look at. And you can share with your mum who wasn't in the consultation so she can see what is going on. You get patients who hate you and nurses who don't like you. It's the general public. If you do get bad comments, you can block them. You don't ignore. It's a tiny, tiny part, just like in everyday life. But there is so much to be gained from interacting with patients online. I would recommend everybody to get into it, but it takes time and it takes effort. And there is a massive learning curve, which is when you copy and replicate. So you go to my channel and think, okay, I like how she did that. That's what she did. I can do that, but I can change breast cancer to lung cancer. Copy and replicate to get an idea and find your style.
That's amazing. Thank you. These are really, really good tips. Do you think that doing this sort of skills, they're really creative? They have a lot of communication skills in there. Do you think these are the skills for the future for people in healthcare? So also researchers in studying medicine.
So I do this. The Institute of Cancer Research in London now sends me their research ahead of the embargo. So I can do a video explaining it in really simple terms to come out on the day it goes. So you have a paper, it's like a huge paper in the Lancet that goes blah, 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 blah. You get someone to explain it, what this actually means is, and this is how it will impact you and what's going to happen in the future. Suddenly that research is accessible to someone who can't be bothered to read a paper and doesn't understand stats.
Yeah.
And I think it is the future. We are going to be doing more interaction online with video calls and things. It gets you used to explaining things in simple terms. It might make you think, actually, hang on. When I say this in clinic, no one actually understands me. There's a great free website called Hemingway Editor where you can put your script in and it will say, this is too complex. This sentence is too long. No one will understand that. And you think, okay, this is how I need to explain things. And it can really help improve your communication.
Yeah, and that's really a good point. And I was thinking about how the newest, talking about social media and new generations that have been using certain type of social media, so maybe TikTok, so that kind of video formats. Language there is essential, and it has to be absolutely inclusive. There's no way around it, because it could bring really, really bad consequences. So I guess some tools like that that really reflect everyday's language and inclusive language, especially.
Yeah. So
Very important.
I have something called a PIFTIC. There's a Patient Information Forum. Have you heard of
Mhm.
it?
Yes,
So
yes.
they do it for charities, but they do it for creators. There's a couple of us that have done it. And I have to prove that all my videos are inclusive, using language or the old text. They're all up to date. I have to check them to remind me that men, women, non-binary people can get breast cancer, that
Mhm.
I am using terms. And it's a good reminder, because we all have little foibles that we slip into. And
Of
when you have
course.
to checklist every time I do a video or I do the captions, it meets all these criteria. And having that is another way of saying you can trust what I'm telling you, because I
Mhm.
have to do this homework first. And the beauty about using places like YouTube is that it could be translated into every language.
Yeah.
So suddenly you can reach everybody, or like people in rare parts of the, not rare, distant parts of the world that don't have access to sensible health information, but find lumps and they're worried, they can suddenly find your video and understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you noticed any regional or cultural differences in the way that breast cancer is discussed or understood
Yeah.
on social media?
So in some Sikh communities, cancer, the word doesn't exist.
Oh, wow.
Cancer is bad luck on the family. They don't talk about it. They don't name it. No one dies of cancer. You don't tell people you have cancer. How can you tell women to check their breasts if the word cancer isn't in that family, isn't in that culture? In a lot of Muslim places, it's unheard of to talk to women about examining their breasts. You can't show breasts in public. So there
Mm.
are people kneading dough to show them how to check their breasts without looking at a breast. There are some communities that don't speak English. How do you meet the migrant communities? Do you need to go into hairdressers, like the Afro-Caribbean hairdressers, where they're having their hair braided and plaited, and then talk to them about women's health issues, because it's not done as a family? There are
Mm.
so many different pots, and we're lucky we can talk about everything, but a lot of people don't have that. And when you don't have friends in that world, it's hard to know how to reach them. So there's a
Mhm,
bit of
mhm.
thinking outside the box, and how can I reach people and find out what those cultural differences are? How can
Right.
I get them talking about cancer without using the word cancer, so they can have a safe conversation?
Hmm. That is such a good point. And that adds to the things that people have to think about now that they
Yeah.
want
But even
to.
when I was training as a junior doctor, we never said the word cancer in front of a patient. It was malignancy or lump or neoplasm, so you didn't scare the patient. It's
Hmm.
completely wrong. If you don't know what you have, you can't get the help and resources.
Hmm.
Times are changing, but there's still a long way to go.
Right. Yeah. And this kind of made me think about, the website. And I don't know if our viewers know about the Copperfield
Yes.
website that was founded in 2009 by the Halenga
Yeah,
twins.
Chris Halenga,
Chris
yes, so
Halenga.
Chris and Maren Halenga.
Yes, and I would encourage you to go and have a look at the website if you want to have a feel of how it might look like to have an inclusive language, or have like a young, fresh
Yeah. So
approach to the matter. Yeah.
it was set up by Chris Halenga when she was diagnosed with breast cancer in her 20s, and her GP didn't think young women could get breast cancer. So it's a charity that goes out into schools, into universities, telling young women how to check their breasts, what to do. They make it fun, trying to raise research and raise awareness that it can happen in young women. It's an incredible
Yeah.
charity.
No, it's great, and they've just done a documentary on the BBC as well. If you are in the UK,
Yeah.
don't miss it. But I went through the checklist myself, and the language is very clear. It's very inclusive. It's very
Yeah.
fun as well. It's not like the typical medical language type of resource.
Yeah.
So I
It's
would
not
encourage you.
scary. It's
No,
just
it's
making
not
it a normal
scary.
part of your everyday life. And if you do find something, then we'll walk you through.
Absolutely, and it's a mix of a kind of a quiz and videos and drawing, so it's really good, and that could be also an example for what can be done for other diseases, other pathologies, and other
Yeah.
content that you want to create. Okay, and God, we covered so much already.
I think so. One thing I'd like to talk about
Yeah.
for healthcare professionals is digital signposting.
Okay,
So I used
please.
to tell my patients, don't go on Google. I will give you all the information you need in a pile of photocopied leaflets.
Okay.
It's the first thing I did. It's the first thing I did when my mum was diagnosed. Patients are going to go, you would. And if you were diagnosed with cancer, you wouldn't go to your doctor's website or your hospital website. You would go to Google or Instagram or YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think asking your patients at a year, what are the apps, websites, books, podcasts, people, influencers that you found useful and helpful? And you can then get junior doctors to go through those. Yes, this is good. This is good. This is good. So when your next patient comes in, you can say, you're going to go online. Here is a list of safe places to start, people to follow, books to read that you and your family can go to get more information. That to me is an instant game changer to improve the quality of care.
Yeah.
Because we've done the hard work. We follow the people we know, and you'll suddenly see, oh, okay, this is out there, that's out there. This is what I can recommend to my patients.
Yeah, Dr. Google is still alive and well, I'm afraid,
And there is some awful stuff out there, depending on what you put into the search engine. So I terrified myself with metastatic blogs of women who were dying. Is that me? You don't see the good stories. People who survive breast cancer don't make the news. So you just see doom and gloom and really exaggerated. Oh my goodness, tamoxifen is a horrific drug. Don't take it. But I meant to be on it for 10 years. And what do I do? And is it safe? So digitally signposting them to safe resources can be a huge game changer.
That is such a good tip, and something that, I hope the people at home will take note of, because
and publishers can do it. You can say, we're publishing breast cancer research. If you want to find out more about what these terms mean, then you could go to Breast Cancer Now, or what they have in Europe, the European Donor. Just ways of helping patients.
Absolutely. I think with Cargo, we do something similar. We translate some of the information that we publish as research with our fast facts that have been,
brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm not taking the credit to my colleagues working on fast facts. Sorry. But I think the translation of the information for the general public, for the patients, it's extremely important. I think a lot of publishers in the medical fields are doing it. I know we are definitely doing it. We have a lot of resources that are allocated to that, and our colleagues in that department are working really hard.
I think it's just quickly. So patients are now following scientific conferences online. Information is shared through Twitter and LinkedIn. They're putting links to following slides. You can get everything, the latest trials, the latest research coming. We are often experts and probably know more than our doctors, because we are looking for the latest research, drugs, trials, what's happening. So if a trial comes out that's relevant to one particular disease, having those fast facts or a little video explainer, what does it mean for this patient? So there's a trial about a cancer vaccine. When is it coming? Can I get it tomorrow? How can I get access to the trial? And just making it accessible for that patient reading it, not a researcher, can be an incredible way of helping the community.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no reason why research should be made accessible, very, summarized, but, in the right way also for practitioners themselves, because as you said, they have no time to read everything, to go to every conference. So to have the sort of easy to read, easy to learn content is absolutely necessary in any case. So do you find yourself your videos have been used also by practitioners and
yes,
doctors?
I've got doctors and nurses recommending my videos and signposting them to people. And it's really great to know that you can still help people. I'm known as a trusted, credible resource that can explain things, and I will give you the no nonsense. This is actually the truth.
You're part of the team still.
Yeah, it's nice to be known for that, because it takes me 8 hours to script an 8-minute video, because I fact check everything. Because for me as a doctor and a PhD student, I want to know that it's right. Not everybody does that, but it's great to know that work is paying off and that you can continue to help doctors and nurses help their patients.
Yeah, no, that's great, and best of luck with the rest of it, because I think there's so much information coming out, and you'll still have a lot of stuff to debunk.
Yes, there's so much, but I enjoy
it. Okay, so we are towards the end of our conversation. I'm sorry, the time has really flown, and it was a pleasure talking to you, really, and learning so much. So thank you again. But I wanted to end with a more fun question, a bit on a lighter note, so then we can go on with our Friday afternoon. So you've done triathlons. You've done some crazy races as well. And you even compared the triathlon stages to your fight with cancer as well in your book. So I thought that was a really powerful image to share. But now let's have some fun. So if you could create your own ideal triathlon, what would the 3 events be? And you don't have to include only sports related stuff. It can be anything that you would totally
Oh my goodness. I do love swimming, but I now do cold water swimming.
Ooh.
I am getting in the rivers in the winter. So I think actually having people to go in a cold water for 2 or 3 minutes, no wetsuits, and just got to be brave enough to go in, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I love that.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
And then I'd love to bring in a baking challenge because I do love baking bread and cakes. And actually, you've got to bake a loaf of bread in this time. I think that would be amazing. And then this is going to make me sound really naff. Going on a walk, but bird spotting. I love the birds, and I think we walk, but we don't listen to see what's around us. And actually, I've kind of mellowed quite a lot. I'm now mainly in the gym lifting weights because it's really important for me, and I've got an indoor cyclist. I'm not well enough to train for all 3 sports, but I love that challenge that you can do absolutely anything you set your mind to. But I need time to think. So I love cycling in the Dolomites, going up and down the mountains. I think that is just beautiful. There'd be no running because I hate running. Maybe some crazy dancing. There was some great guys on Instagram who put out these crazy dance routines that you can follow. I think that could be amazing, having a mass aerobics session.
Okay, so no, we have to narrow it down to 3 though. We have to, and then
a cold water swim, and then a bike ride in the Dolomites, going up and down the beautiful mountains in the summer, and then I think an aerobics dancing competition, just letting everything go. And
my God. Okay. That sounds fun. I really like the baking thing as well, but
I know baking would be after. The baking can be a competition because I have to bake with love. The minute I'm stressed, nothing works. So
all right,
you bake the day before. You bake the day before, so you've got the cake to eat afterwards.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. That was really fun, and thank you for your time today. I will just say thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in today and for being part of this conversation. For those of you watching from home or the office, don't miss our dedicated breast cancer newsletter in German for HSPCs, doctors, and which has a focus on breast diseases and women's health. And you can see the QR code here. And then also, please don't miss our next People in Science Live on the 5th of November with me, when we'll be talking about biotechnologies with John Cumbers, who's the CEO of SynBioBeta. And you can find the link on the screen now. Liz, thank you again. It was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
No, it was brilliant. Thank you for asking me some really interesting questions as well.
Oh, thank you. Have a lovely evening. Rest of the day, and hope to see you soon here, maybe.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.